On the opposite end of what critics had to say, I rather enjoyed Pacific Rim Uprising, and I'll tell you why coming up. Hi everyone, I'm Isaac and this is Movie University. On this channel I do movie reviews in addition to telling you the technical aspects of what goes into making said movie. If you want to see more reviews like this one, consider subscribing and turn on the channel for notifications. Just a heads up, there are going to be some minor spoilers throughout this review. Pacific Rim Uprising takes place a decade or so ago after the first movie. John Boyega plays the son of Idris Elba's character from the first movie. We learn he attempts to follow in his father's footsteps, but ends up washing out of the Jaeger program. We see the typical story of a young person who feels he cannot live up to the expectations of society and ends up going off the deep end. He gets involved with some people and ends up on the wrong side of the law. A series of bad decisions leads John to re-enlisting with the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. He ends up alongside Scott Eastwood, becoming an instructor to the next generation of Jaeger pilots. It's pretty cliche at this point to see a pair of super motivated individuals alongside somebody who doesn't want to be there, but is conveniently really good at something for the plot. What makes this work throughout the movie is Scott Eastwood and John Boyega are both great actors. Even when you put them in bad movies, they still shine. The two scientists from the first movie make appearances. I don't want to give away the plot, but it's pretty disappointing to see how one of them ends up. Another part of the movie that is disappointing is the lack of kaiju scenes as compared to the first movie. In the first film, we see them at the beginning, the end, and spread sporadically throughout, whether it was in news clips or historical footage. In this movie, I feel like the kaiju don't really show up until the last half of the movie. Looking behind the lens, Pacific Rim Uprising was shot on a plethora of cameras, all of which I have listed on the side. The movie was recorded on a relatively low resolution of 2.8K and 3.4K ARRI cameras and is not a high enough resolution for super screens like IMAX or RPX, and as such you get a digital intermediate transfer for the final product. In today's day and age, it's becoming increasingly uncommon to find a movie whose imagery doesn't look too sharp on the big screen. But yet, I found myself thinking about this subject a couple of times while watching it. While we're on the subject of resolution, there were also several times I felt that special effects were not up to par during the action sequences, with some smoke looking like first generation CGI from 20 years ago. This is a shame since on the surface, Pacific Rim Uprising looks like it could be one of those movies that looks absolutely beautiful on the home theater system. Like the first movie, I'm sure when it's released in the 4K format for home entertainment, Universal will give it an HDR treatment and it'll look great in regard to the amount of color seen on screen. The cinematography is quite beautiful, with the camera constantly kept in motion during action sequences, but also used on sliders for slow moving scenes to give a more intimate setting. In my opinion, those camera attributes, alongside some great set builds, make the movie look more polished than what it really is. Moving over to sound, Uprising is mixed in Dolby Digital, Aura 11.1, and Dolby Digital Atmos.
And 3, 2, 1, go!
I saw this movie at my local Regal RPX, and I have to say the surround sound was pretty good. All the surround channels are taken advantage of, which seems to be a rarity in a lot of movies for some reason. I thought the volume a bit too loud and boomy at times, as you can see from my sound readings I took during the viewing. I think this is more than likely a problem with the RPX sound system not being calibrated versus the sound engineering of the movie itself. On the subject of audio, I was a little disappointed in the music. To me, the theme song of the first Pacific Rim was memorable, and I felt it was only used a couple of times in this one. The action throughout is pretty good. If you like Gundam Wing and Transformers, I think you're going to love the action sequences here. They are what makes seeing Pacific Rim 2 worth seeing on the big screen. Just keep in mind, while the action is pretty good, the story is mediocre and will only keep your attention because of some comedic moments by Boyega and decent acting from most of the cast. Pacific Rim 2 isn't intended to be a thought-provoking movie, but instead another loud action flick. It would be unfair to compare it against other movies like Inception, since it was never intended to be that way. I feel like the producers tried to expand the story of the Pacific Rim franchise, while still trying to give us a lot of familiar moments from the first movie. It doesn't always work here, but I do appreciate the effort. If you enjoyed the first film, I think you'll enjoy this one as well.
This is our time, and we are Earth's last defense.
Tell me what you thought of Pacific Rim 2 in the comments section below, and consider subscribing on your way out.
Fire everything you got!